Party. And BLM does not stand for Black Lives Matter. It stands for burn, loot, and murder. And that's what we should call them from now on.
It gets exciting over here.
Oh, gonna get spicy now.
Party. And BLM does not stand for Black Lives Matter. It stands for burn, loot, and murder. And that's what we should call them from now on.
Now that we know that it was not the pandemic of the unvaccinated, now that we know that Ukraine is not actually winning the war against Russia, it could be time to revisit some of the other slogans we've been assured are true and ordered to repeat. Are they in fact true? Did, for example, a racist white cop actually murder a man called George Floyd, a civil rights leader, in Minneapolis on Memorial Day of 2020? Now, we've been told that happened, told it relentlessly for more than 3 years. So at this point, we've been told it so much that pretty much everybody seems to believe it. And because everyone does kind of believe it, a small group of people has been allowed to make massive changes to American society. They include, but are not limited to, decriminalizing stealing, defunding the police, adding a new federal holiday to the calendar called Juneteenth, the ceasing of hiring all white men in corporate America, and of course, significantly, they also sent a cop called Derek Chauvin to prison for more than 40 years. He would be the racist white devil who murdered George Floyd. But the question is, did he actually murder George Floyd? And the answer is, well, no, he didn't murder George Floyd. And we're not guessing about that. We know it conclusively, thanks to a new court case now underway in Hennepin County, Minnesota. The case was brought by a prosecutor there called Amy Sweezy. She's suing her boss. So the case is not actually about George Floyd or Derek Chauvin, but it tells you an awful lot about both of them. In her deposition, which you should read, Amy Sweezy describes a conversation that she had with the county medical examiner, Andrew Baker, right after George Floyd died. Quote, "I called Dr. Baker early that morning to tell him about the case and to ask him if he would perform the autopsy on Mr. Floyd." Sweezy recalls all this under oath in the deposition. Quote, "He called me later in the day on that Tuesday, and he told me that there were no medical findings that showed any injury to the vital structures of Mr. Floyd's neck. There were no medical indications of asphyxia or strangulation." Oh. In other words, George Floyd, according to the official autopsy, was not murdered. He died instead of what we used to call natural causes, which in his case would include decades of drug use.
This is going to make some people upset.
I was going to make a lot of people upset. This is what I call stereotypical dead man walking syndrome. His system was so overloaded with drugs that he was essentially, by the time the police got there, he was already dead.
Wow.
It's just his brain hadn't caught up to the rest of his body yet.
Yeah, to a degree, I feel bad for anybody who is suffering with drugs and stuff like that. And I wish what happened that day didn't happen the way it did. You know,
I mean,
I'm not of the conviction that Derek Chauvin did anything wrong, at least not to the degree of what they talk about.
Don't get me wrong. The loss of life is tragic, but the idea that Derek Chauvin did anything wrong or any of the other cops did anything wrong on that day is preposterous. They did what they had to do to contain the scene and make sure that the person in question didn't escape or run away or do something insane, because he was obviously not in a right mind.
It's crazy. Wow. This is a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. I'm no longer of that conviction that I never was. I was very doubtful. I'm a skeptic on many things. But when I watched the movie by Candace Owens, The Greatest Slide Ever Sold, that was clear enough for me. The narrative wasn't correct. There's some things they were hiding. But they get what they wanted, though. You know, Black Lives Matter got money, and the whole world has changed, and the police system has changed. We have violence on our streets as a result, because if they're black, you can't touch them. All this crazy stuff. You know, woke mayors, George Soros backed up mayors and all that. They are the ones destroying our cities. But yeah, mission accomplished if you think about it. Wow. Anyway, let's get back
And
to
all
it.
these new laws they put into place because of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
As well as the fatal concentration of fentanyl that was in his system on his final day. So this was not a killing. It was yet another narcotics OD in a country that records more than 100,000 of them every year. The medical examiner clearly understood that and, in fact, articulated it. And Sweezy explains. He said to me, she recalls in the deposition, Amy, what happens when the actual evidence doesn't match up with the public narrative that everyone's already decided on? And then he said, quote, this is the kind of case that ends careers. In other words, everyone lied about it from the very beginning. The people who knew the truth hid the truth and allowed the revolution to proceed.
What would you do when your life and your career is on the line? Can you still tell the truth is the question. Very few individuals could make that sacrifice. Very few.
It depends on how much you value your integrity.
I think that's kind of what's going on in our culture here. A lot of people know there's some things that are wrong in society. I don't want to generalize the thing, but to come back to the specific, a lot of people know what happened to George Floyd, and I think they don't want to be honest about it because their career is on the line. The wrath of Black Lives Matter and Black people and white liberals, it's like they're afraid of that.
And are you willing to compromise your morals to appease the narrative in the masses?
Yeah, that's the other side of the extreme. If you lack integrity, you do anything.
Sorry, my integrity comes before that.
Should, right?
I value my integrity more than a passing, waning, fleeting thing. And it's like the old adage goes, you either stand for something or you fall for anything.
Exactly.
Now they've been exposed. Now we know the truth. What happens next? Well, they're going to ignore it. The Biden administration just issued a long purple statement celebrating George Floyd's birthday. He's a martyr, despite the fact we know that he was not murdered. And by the way, Derek Chauvin is still languishing in jail for the rest of his life. So how do we respond to this? How do we respond to the truth once we have it? Well, Vince Everett Ellison seemed like a good man to ask. He's the author of Crime, Inc. He joins us now. Vince, thanks so much for coming on. So as with so many other stories, the origin
thanks for having me, Tucker.
of COVID, it's a blessing to have you. We now know what actually happened, but the question then is, what do you do with that knowledge? We know that the U.S. government, Tony Fauci, worked with the Chinese to create the virus that overturned the American economy. But what do we do with that knowledge? What do we do with the knowledge that George Floyd was not actually strangled to death by a cop?
We have to acknowledge the people that gave it to us and why. See, George Floyd is the Democratic Party's prototypical Black man. These are the Black men they are trying to create. So George Floyd has to be elevated. He has to be celebrated. He's perfect to them. He was poor. He was uneducated. He was a drug addict. He didn't have a job. He was down there begging and crying and asking the white people to not kill him. To a Democrat, to a white Democrat, this is the perfect Black man. So he has to be elevated. Look, not a few days ago, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden celebrated hip hop music. They had a celebration of hip hop.
Hip hop culture is America's culture. It is a genre. It is music and melody and rhyme. And hip hop is also an ethos.
A music genre that calls the Black man the N word, calls women the W word and the B word, talks about misogyny.
I want to do a little bit of devil's advocate here. Some when you say hip hop, you gotta kind of clean it up a little bit. Which version of hip hop? Because Tom McDonald has rap, Dax is rapping, and so I think we need to actually clean up. What
are we talking? Rap hip hop? Are we talking pop hip hop?
You talking about mainstream rap music? Or are you talking about just hip hop in general. You know what I'm saying? So we can condemn a genre of music, just like you cannot do for rock and roll or heavy metal. It's really the content that's in the message we need to talk about.
Mhm.
But I know what he's saying though. And we've talked about this before. A lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
what's going on from the mainstream. That's why you don't see no reaction video coming from me of Lil Nas X. You don't see that. You don't see
Or
you know,
Cardi B.
yeah, no Cardi B. We're not rapping nothing around here. You don't see certain artists, at least mainstream rappers. We don't touch them for a good reason because
Mhm.
they don't have anything to tell us that is decent. Yeah, so I totally agree. I think hip hop has been one of the worst things that ever happened to the black community.
Absolutely.
I think the indoctrination in
And
it.
not just the black community, it's also filtered into the white community as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's gone over to China. I was watching a documentary and seeing how hip hop influenced the people in China.
Hmm.
Even the Chinese government is concerned. It's like, goodness, our kids are losing their minds and da 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 da. You know, but this is not to say hip hop doesn't have good things in it. I can
Right.
advocate for the fact that it teaches you literary skills. It teaches you great vocabulary, fast thinking ability. A rapper with the right message can change the world.
Hmm.
But at the same time, when the men start rapping about money, sex, drugs, and violence, it does go down to it has an impact on the community.
Yeah,
It has an impact
absolutely.
on the psyche of black people. And I think a lot of what's going on in black culture, what we see happening in the inner city crimes, yeah, it comes from the music. It comes from the doctrine that we all receive from hip hop artists. Simple as
Yeah,
that.
I mean, you got people like Dax, Adam Calhoun, you got Tom McDonald, Ryan Upchurch, you
Mhm.
know, all these other all
They're not
these.
they're not
uh,
doing that.
you're not gonna find the good rappers in the mainstream. You're gonna find them as independent artists because the mainstream will never sign these people up and let them have their platform the way they want it.
Now, you brought another point, and I don't want to go too far into this. Majority of the people that are signing rappers, right, that are
Mhm.
singing to black community, who are the main group of people who are record labels? Who are they? Ah,
Mm.
let me think about that. I know this is sensitive time. We're not gonna go into Gaza right now. Israel just had a serious situation. There's war going on. And I asked myself this major question. Why do you keep signing rappers that you know is promoting violence to black community? If you're not racist, if you don't hate black people, if you know what they're pushing is bad, but you're signing the rappers that are promoting that which is bad.
And then taking hundreds of millions of dollars in life insurance policies on them.
Yeah, even after they're gone, you use their voice to still make music. They end up being of more value after they are dead than when they were alive.
Hmm.
I'm just questioning that system. There's something very sick about that system, and we need to ask some serious questions. Why do you do that? If you were of that moral value, you were true, you were honest, and you cared about people, as at least from the perspective of what we are told, why do you do that?
Yeah.
That's all. That's all. Just asking questions. And
And,
don't call me anti-Semitic either. I'm not putting
and
all Jewish people in this lump. I'm just saying
and what's the one Jewish rapper we like there?
high res.
High Res. Yeah. Look at him. He's good.
Totally different. Totally different, man.
And again, not signed to a record label. Gee, I wonder why that is.
You can't.
You know what I'm saying?
You can't. Because you can't promote degeneracy. Yeah, if you're gonna sign with a record label, you have to promote the degeneracy. But if you don't want to be part of that culture, you have to do things on your own.
Yeah, look at Samson. Again, another one.
Yeah.
Independent rapper.
Yeah. Make a lot of sense. Tell it like it is. Gives you a
But
piece of his mind. But
like I said,
you don't feel like canceling somebody after you listen to that. You don't feel that way.
no. I mean, you may feel like you want to go out and punch somebody in the face. That's a
Mhm.
different story. But, you know, at least you feel empowered to make a change.
Yeah. That's all. So I really I question the system. Like I said, Chris Scott, I'm questioning the system behind these decisions. That's all.
Yeah.
Something's very strange to me. But you're not supposed to say that. You're gonna be called anti-Semitic.
Exactly.
Calls women the W word and the B word. talks about misogyny, shooting police, smoking dope, selling dope, fighting, killing, acting a fool. They celebrated this genre. Why? Because this is how they see Black America. They see us the same way they see George Floyd. And they have to make more of us because everywhere they rule, you know, John F. Kennedy stood in front of the Berlin Wall in the 60s and said, if you think that communism is great, let them come to Berlin. Well, if you think that the Democratic Party is great, let them come to Detroit. Let them come to Chicago. Let them come to St. Louis. Let them come to LA, Portland, Seattle, Memphis. Anywhere where they rule, you'll see George Floyd's all over the place. And they're proud of them. In Baltimore, Maryland, they spend $21,000 per child for every child up there inside the school district. Not one school is proficient in math, science, or reading. But they keep it going every year. Why? Because they're producing George Floyd.
But
and George Floyd's vote for the Democrat Party.
But why would, so when most of us, you, me, I think all normal people look at George Floyd's life, you think this is a disaster. This guy never added anything. He took a lot in prison at least 8 times. I mean, his life was a tragedy at best. Why would you want more people like that?
Because he votes for the Democrat Party. And then he teaches his children to vote for the Democrat Party. And then these white Democrats can feel superior to him. Yeah. He can be controlled by them. Just like, think about an old slave plantation, talk about back in the day, how they wanted their slaves to act. Subservient, obedient, ignorant, you know, doing what he was told, not asking any questions, having a slave mind, being dependent on them. This is how they want Black men to be in America. This is how they want the whole Black community to be. This is why it started in the civil rights movement. When Martin Luther King.
Yo, he holds nothing back.
No, I like this guy.
Very few Black men can speak like this nowadays, at least publicly.
Yeah,
that's what
he's very on point with what he's saying too, because they want the average Black person to be dumb, ignorant, and kept in a slave mind victim. Well, now it's called victim mentality, because that way they're easier to control. And just like he's saying, it's like same as back in the slavery days. It's a slave mentality of the mind more so than actual chains and physical chains.
Yeah. It's called a mental plantation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's horrible, but I can see it though. It does have an impact on a Black culture. I was raised around Black people. I was raised in Brooklyn, New York. I saw it on display. I was impacted by it until Jesus came and pulled me out of that stuff. But I'll tell you what, it's very powerful what these people are doing. But I get what he's saying though. Like they want to create victims so that they can have a savior complex. So we need people who are victims so that we have a reason to exist, a reason to save them from something. And then they create this boogeyman, which they call white supremacists today, or they call it the white liberals, and sometimes they even call the MAGA Republicans are now becoming the new label.
Exactly, and it's just nothing more than gaslighting to keep people docile and subservient.
Yeah, and the perspective that is very disturbing here is the conception that Black people ought to be afraid of white people, when majority of the crimes being committed to white people are largely done by the hands of Blacks.
And even to Black people, they do it to themselves.
They do it to themselves. So it's not really the other way around. So if white people were the people we need to be afraid of, we should see more white people putting us to death. But that's not what's going on. Actually, Blacks being a minority, somewhere about 13%, which a large amount of them are incarcerated, going back to proving the point. And they are the one committing most of the crimes. I've seen some videos. I'll tell you what, if it was the other way around, it'd be a different story. You walk up in the back of the head and then bang. If this had happened to a Black man, I mean, the streets would be on fire. It's crazy how that goes. It's just the standard is like which one is it, man?
Right. It's rules for thee, not for me. But like I said, this man, I mad respect for him for calling things out the way he is. I mean,
I'm already looking up his books. I'm looking up his books.
He's amazing.
That's what we need to hear. And this is what black people need to hear. Not just black anybody, okay? But black people needs to hear from voices of black people like this. Tell it like it is. Don't sugarcoat the message. Tell them the truth. And he's so base, man.
Yeah, like people like him and Thomas Sowell, man.
Oof. It's hard to refute people like that. There's common sense, there's honesty, and there's boldness going on here.
King Jr. in his Green speech said, 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro is still not free. He said, 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro is still not free. He said 5 times in that speech that we were not free. It turned the Declaration of Independence on its head, because in our Declaration of Independence, it said that our freedom was an unalienable right given us by God. John Locke, in his second treatise of government, said that an unalienable right is a right given from God. It is irrevocable, non-transferable, and unsellable. The government cannot touch it. It supersedes law. It supersedes the Constitution. However, King said that we was coming to government and to the white man for our right to be free. Even at the end of the speech, he said, on some certain day, we'll be free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. He said in that speech, when will we be satisfied? He said, we will never be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. That's a fancy way of saying never. And so black people heard that speech and said that we were not free here in America. And we make our children recite that speech every single year on King's birthday. And they say in that speech, the Negro is still not free. George Floyd was a slave in his mind. And the civil rights movement caused him to be a slave in his mind. And today they're still marching, 60 years later, telling black people, you're not free. Beg for reparations, beg for affirmative action, kill your children in the womb, cut off your child, you castrate your children, let drag queens come into school and shake their behinds in your children's faces, run God out of the public square. And then they end up like George Floyd.
I'll tell you one thing that really makes me upset is when the woke movement has decided that to be black is to be part of that woke ideology. I don't know when did they decide to connect black people to LGBTQIA plus ideation. It's almost like, excuse me, we don't have the same history.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what happened to black people was atrocious in this country, and people are waking up and trying to build and clean up. But I don't know why they're connecting it. It's like the connection here is like,
it's part of the Victim Olympics with the critical race theory.
Victim Olympics. Yeah, exactly. It's just crazy to me.
Because, you know, you have your hierarchy on the Victim Olympics. You know, you start off as a black person. Then if you're a black gay person, that's bad. Then if you're a black trans person, that's even worse. Then, you know, you're a black male trans person, that's bad. Then if you're a black white or a black female trans person, that's the worst. You know, I mean, it snowballs from there, you know, and you just climb up the rungs of the victimhood mentality.
Oh my Lord, it's like a ladder.
Yeah. The higher you go, the better the medal you get.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. That is great.
But the one thing they do consistently is they vote for the Democrat Party, and the places where George Floyd's live, they stay in absolute power.
That's a pretty dark explanation. So you're saying that the Democratic Party as an organization intentionally degrades black people to keep them compliant and obedient.
Oh yes, in my book Crime Inc., I talk about one of the main things they do, like the mafia and organized crime. They humiliate black people. They demoralize them. It's a Marxist construct. They demoralize their people. They beat them down. They tell them that they're victims. Well, it was Martin Luther King Jr. that said they tell you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, how can you pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you're bootless? You know, he told us we were bootless. You know, you have black preachers, and you know about my iron triangle, the black preacher, the black politician, the black civil rights worker. They go into the black community. Consistently, you're a victim. You're oppressed. The country hates you. Well, see, I look at them and I say, I'm a black man, but I cannot be oppressed. You know why? Because I'm a child of God. I'm an heir of Jesus Christ. I cannot be a victim. Why? Because I'm an heir of Jesus Christ. I'm a child of God.
Amen.
Let's go. I love that guy. He holds nothing back. And this is the thing. Victimhood doesn't fit in the gospel.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. Like, you cannot be a victim and be freed from sin at the same time.
Mm-mm.
It's either you're a slave to sin, or you've never been saved by the grace of Christ, then therefore you're a victim. But if you are free, if you are a Christian, which I don't understand, because majority of black people claim to be Christians, right? It's like, even when you hear those rappers and that Lil Wayne, you know, every time they win an award, I just want to give God praise. I want to give Jesus thanks. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, bro. Give Jesus thanks, but you promote an entire different message than the one that Jesus preaches about. But nevertheless, so, majority of them would like to talk like that, but at the same time, they go as far as calling themselves victims. It's like, which one is it, brother?
Either you're a Christian or a victim. Which is it? You can't
Yeah.
be both.
You can't be both, man. You can't be both, because also a lot of the victim stuff is driven by fear. The Bible also tells us that perfect love casts out fear, because fear has torment. And
Mhm.
God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. So you're not supposed to be afraid as Christian. Doesn't mean we don't deal with fear, but we don't let fear control our lives. Victimhood is like they're completely dependent on the fear complex to, they're moved by fear. Everything they do is in the light of fear. You know, when they're censoring people, it's because they're afraid of what the words might do to somebody. It's kind of like, it's too much.
Oh my word! Your words hurt my fifis.
It's just not good, man. This is not good. That's not Christian at all.
No, not in the least. And I am so over this whole petty. You know what? Just get over yourself and move on with life, please.
Yeah.
Just
Thank you for the verse. I'm going to read that. 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. I love when you guys put scriptures up there. It makes it easier for me. So I don't have to go look for scriptures. And so when you bring something up and you read the scriptures, you're already doing my scripture reading for myself. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate
doing
that.
half the work for us.
Using this text, proving the point that we were trying to make. Majority of these systems are motivated by money as well. I think there's greed, there's power, there's control, but most of it is money. The love of money, to be exact, because money is not evil. It's the love of it that's the evil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like these systems cannot exist. Like the Al Sharpton of our society, the Jesse Jackson of our society. If black people are no longer a victim, these guys get fired.
They don't. They're out of job. Yeah.
They don't have a reason to exist. So what do? Well, you gotta keep them. You gotta keep them in that victim mentality. That's how you get paid.
That's why they go along with the narrative and keep pushing along.
It's crazy, man. It's sick, though. I know I'm using this word over and over again. I have nothing else to use. It's so pathetic.
It's not just sick. It's downright demented.
Oh, goodness. Oof.
Oppressed. You know why? Because I'm a child of God. I'm an heir of Jesus Christ. I cannot be a victim. Why? Because I'm an heir of Jesus Christ. I'm a child of God. I cannot be a victim. See, they tell these people to go against their religion and their basic ideology, because most black men say they're Christians, right? But then they walk around saying, I'm oppressed. I'm a victim. I'm afraid. 365 times in our Bible, they tell us to fear not. Yet they walk around saying they're afraid in the United States of America. LeBron James said he's afraid. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar says he's afraid. Kaepernick said he's afraid. Well, I'm a black man in America, and I'm not afraid of a damn thing. I don't ask for permission in my own house. America is my home. So as they walk around here crying, talking about, I'm frightened, I'm afraid, I can't make it, please help me, I tell them they stink in my nostrils. They're an affront to God. The flip side of white male intimidation during the civil rights was also black male cowardice. They laid down and let them beat them, slap them around, rape their wives and their children.
I want to hear that again. The flip side of white man intimidation. How did he say that?
A white male intimidation is my home. So as they walk around here crying, talking about, I'm frightened, I'm afraid, I can't make it, please help me, I tell them they stink in my nostrils. They're an affront to God. The flip side of white male intimidation during the civil rights was also black male cowardice.
Oh, he is on fire.
He's preaching now.
He does not hold back.
No,
He
not
just-
in the least.
Oh man, he is brutal.
He's going full bore.
I can't refute a thing. Somebody
Tell
and
me
I'm
where the lie is.
I'm pretty good at refuting things. I can discern deception and I can call it out. I can't. I'm unable to. My hands are tied. Both hands and feet are tied. I don't know.
No lies detected.
I cannot detect a single lie. This is great.
They laid down and let them beat them, slap them around, rape their wives and their children. Well, no, not me, never me. I'm a free man. I live in the United States of America. They say it's an honor to be that there's white supremacy and that white people have some type of privilege. Well, as I said before, it is a privilege to be white, but it's also a privilege to be black. And it's a privilege to be an American. And it's really a privilege to be a Christian in the United States of America, the greatest country on the face of this earth. And they're not going to make a George Floyd out of me. I stand up strong. I look them in the eye and I say, I'm a free man. My freedom comes from God. It's an unalienable right given to me by him. You cannot touch it. And if you try it, I got two things that'll get you off of me. Jesus and my 38. Come try me out.
Amen. Praise the Lord. Pass the ammunition.
Oh man, that was epic. my guy holds nothing back. I gotta get that book now. You just sold me your book, man. You didn't have to say anything else about your book. You talk like that. I'm like, okay, what else does he have in his mind?
Right? It's like, dang, if he talks like this, what's in the book?
I can listen to him all day long. Great to go, bud. Way to go. That's what's lacking today.
And I'm sorry. Just one thing I got to point out here. If white privilege is a thing, where's mine? I'm still waiting for it.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
That's what I'm asking. I'm like, over here, please. Waiting.
Yeah, you gotta go through the same system just like everybody else and go through the same trouble. I don't see it.
I've yet to see it.
I can't find it. So it's pure nonsense. Yeah. Maybe Hispanic privilege. I don't know. Is that a thing?
I mean, if you come over the border legally.
Yeah. I mean, I find it more difficult to go to the welfare office and get help. But at least where I'm at, if you're Hispanic, you get help. Like, quickly. I don't know, because most of the people that are working there are Hispanic. So they can this is like somewhat they can work with the Hispanic people. But yeah, trying to help my certain family members of mine who really needed the help. Nope, they were denied. And we had a lady with 3 babies and everything. She went in and got like mad money. I'm like, okay, I get that. She got a cash assistant, this and that, $3,000, $2,000 a month in food stamp. I'm like, wow, sheesh. We couldn't even get $50.
Goodness gracious.
Oh man, if I show you, like, hey man, we go to Walmart, especially on a Friday on the first week. And you go on Friday. I'm not.
I know.
I'm not jealous. My family, we're doing fine. We work, and I work on YouTube, and I got ministry that I do, and I do have a job. My wife and I, we're not financially messed up. I mean, we're not there, but we're not glorifying in anything money. But you go to these stores and you see these markets. It's like one in front, one behind, food to the top, and the bottom is loaded with water. It's like, man, that's like a $600, $800 bill. We got a couple like almond milk and it's like, yo, that's $80. I'm like, yo, don't add anything extra. We have a list. It's like,
you got like 4 things in your cart, and that's like, okay, that's $100. We're good.
Yeah, my wife sent me to Walmart the other day. She usually does the food shopping. She gave me a list, and she even tells me which brand to buy because of the price. She said, no, don't get that brand. Get this brand. Get the value brand. I'm like, why? It's like, no, because we only have $85. And yeah, she was correct. It was actually 83 something, the bill by the time. And I laughed. I was like, okay. And I followed the list. And she said, no, go to the top of the list. Go to the very top of the aisle. Look at the very bottom. And it's like, at the very bottom, get on your knees. And there was one all the way at the bottom. I'm like, oh, yeah, there it is.
Man.
That's how we do food shopping out here.
Right.
I would say we gotta work. We gotta make it happen. I think some people can go to the system and get whatever they want, but it doesn't work for all of us. So
Nope.
there's no black privilege over here either.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. Oh, he's on fire though.
Really a privilege to be a Christian in the United States of America, the greatest country on the face of this earth. And they're not going to make a George Floyd out of me. I stand up strong. I look them in the eye and I say, I'm a free man. My freedom comes from God. It's an unalienable right given to me by him. You cannot touch it. And if you try it, I got two things that'll get you off of me. Jesus and my 38. Come try me out.
So the Democratic Party used BLM as a domestic militia in the last presidential cycle, 2020, to defeat Donald Trump. Do you expect something like that to happen again?
Well, you see how they use the same tactics as Iran. Iran has Hezbollah and Hamas as their militias. And the Democratic Party uses BLM and Antifa as theirs, throwing the rock and hiding the hand. Of course they're going to do it. They've always done it. Even at the beginning, they used the Ku Klux Klan for the military reign. Now they're using BLM, they're using Antifa, they're using NAACP, and they're their suicide bombers. They're their shock troops. They're their brown shirts. They're their street soldiers. And they're going to go out there, and I guarantee you, Tucker, they're going to look over all the black-on-black violence. They're going to look over all the black men killing black men. They're going to look over all the snatching grabs and all the burning and all the fighting and looting and acting a fool. And they're going to find one crazy white cop that's going to do something to some crazy black man, and then they're going to try to burn this country down for it.
How long have we been saying this on this channel?
We've been talking. You've been saying this, man. 2024.
We've been saying this since 2020, my man.
Oh my goodness, 2024. Brace yourself, especially when Trump is leading in the polls as well as he's doing right now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's only going to get worse.
It's only a matter of time before you hear, boom, something happened. Some black men die or some cops did something, and you're not going to see the whole video. And before you know it, Derek Chauvin, George Floyd 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take the streets.
Or Kenosha Kid 2.0.
It's crazy, man. He's on point, though. It's about to happen. Wait, 2024 is coming. Sometimes it starts happening out right in the middle of December. You know, the heat starts turning up. And before you know it, 2020, boom, it shows up all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, it's bound to happen. You know, every election cycle, every 4 years, this is how the Democrats work. This is what they do. They turn around, and when it comes time to elect a new president, they got to stir the pot somehow, and eventually they'll get some patsy to get something on the news, and they'll just run it over and over and over and make a huge deal out of it and rile up the masses. They did it before, and they'll do it again.
Wow. Have mercy.
Mark my words.
Mark my words. I sent you a message. All right, let's keep going.
Something to some crazy black man, and then they're going to try to burn this country down for it. That's their plan. That's their template. I hope America's ready for it because it's coming. And it always works for them. It always works because the press and everybody's just waiting. Oh, they're on the starting line just waiting for it. And as soon as they find that golden kill, watch them go crazy with it. BLM is going to start getting their money from the Democrat Party because that's who they get it from. The same way that Hamas gets their money from Iran. BLM gets their money from the Democrat Party. And BLM does not stand for Black Lives Matter. It stands for burn, loot, and murder. And that's what we should call them from now on.
Vince Everett Ellison, Bible in the 38. It's great to see you today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he threw a wrench in the engine, boy.
Oh yeah, he's definitely throwing a wrench into it.
Oh my Lord, he just burned the building down. The truth was so good to hear it.
You know, to back up what Tucker was talking about, there are a couple of news articles that back that up.
Yes, let's pull this up quick. Yeah, so the George Floyd situation here, a few have not of the conviction that George Floyd did die as a result of drugs. Tucker made reference to one article, Medical Examiner.
So this is the original article that was done, I think, back in 2022. Now, if you go to the 5th paragraph, okay, Baker said his office received hundreds of calls, some harassing and threatening former Washington, D.C. medical examiner Dr. Roger Mitchell. Okay. All right, I'll start over. Baker said his office received hundreds of phone calls, some harassing and threatening. Former Washington, D.C. medical examiner Dr. Mitchell, who is an expert in custody deaths, also called Baker, who and was unhappy. Baker said the two talked about neck compression, and Mitchell also planned to publish a critical op-ed in the Washington Post. Baker said he considered Mitchell's opinion and analysis before adding neck compression to his report. So initially, when the initial autopsy, he wasn't even going to add anything about neck compression to George Floyd's death because it had nothing to do with George Floyd's death.
Nope.
But with pressure coming down from DC, with all these calls and stuff coming in of a harassing nature, then he added it to his report.
Yeah, yeah. You also spoke about Andy, Andy Nego?
Andy Neo.
Neo. Okay. So it's talking about court documents. Derek
So
showed that the public extreme pressure on the prosecutor over George Floyd's death, even when evidence didn't show damage to his neck, far like extremist promise, bloodshed and terror attack if Chauvin wasn't convinced. So there was definitely external pressure that played with the facts here of the autopsy that was being done. So this was like, again, it goes back to integrity, right? Are you willing to sacrifice your job for the sake of truth, or are you willing to deny that which is truth for the sake of keeping money, having my job? It looks like Baker cracked under pressure.
Yeah, he did. And this is what Tucker was talking about during his segment where he said to me, Amy, what happens when the actual evidence doesn't match up with the public narrative that everyone's already decided on? And then he said, this is the kind of case that ends careers. You can see it right there in line 9.
Right there.
So, I mean, he was under so much pressure to deliver what was expected of him. He cracked under pressure and did what everybody wanted him to do.
It's crazy. Wow. And here we are today. The world has changed. That been rooted, and all this crazy stuff has happened under a lie, based on a lie. This is another article that you've sent me. Far left pressure in George Floyd case may have influenced trial despite lack of strangulation evidence, court documents.
Yeah. So, and according to this article, it shows that there was no evidence that there was anything that Derek Chauvin did in his arrest or in the time of George Floyd being in his custody that would have led to his death. Like, George Floyd was basically a dead man walking already at that point because of the fact that the amount of fentanyl in his system was 11 milligrams per milliliter. Okay, so if you know how it works, 2 milligrams of fentanyl is enough for an overdose. Okay, so that's more than 3 times the legal, or actually it's more than almost 2. Yeah, that's more than 4 times
the
legal limit for an overdose. So he was basically, his body was already dead. His brain just hadn't caught up with the fact yet. There was nothing Chauvin could have done to prevent his death. And the reason, and Chris, to answer your question, he was just waiting for the paramedics to show up and deal with the situation. That's why. He was restraining him, holding him there to wait for the paramedics. That's all it was.
Part of what I condemn from this is maybe his judgment, because if George Floyd was not able to fight, his arms were already behind. I'm not saying he is wrong, because
Well, here's the thing. He was shown that it was, if you watch the body cam footage, he was able to fight. He was struggling. He actually shoved himself out of the car onto the ground on the opposite side. That's where he was laying.
Yeah, I remember that part.
So he was fighting back.
But I wonder, when he was on the floor, was he still able to fight as much? Because it looks like he was kind of getting weaker and weaker. Again, we don't know. If his person is on drugs, it's amazing what they could do. So I'm just using this perspective here.
At that point, that's when his body was starting to fail.
Yeah.
See, that's when his brain was starting to catch up with the rest of his body.
Yeah, I wonder if he had taken notice of that during that moment to say, hey, he looks like he's weak now. He doesn't look like he can fight anymore. Let's just release the pressure. It looks like there were things that probably could have been done. But again, it's easier said than done. I'm examining this thing years down the road, and I'm not a cop. I don't even know all the stuff that went into it. So I'm just looking at
I'm saying the same thing I said back then. Yeah. At that point, Chauvin was more focused on keeping the scene secure, keeping the suspect secure until paramedics arrived. Yeah. Period. Point blank.
Yep.
And making sure that his suspect didn't get away, making sure that once the paramedics got there, the scene was secure so that they could take care of him and administer proper medical treatment. Got it. Point blank.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have an issue with it. The evidence is very clear to me that that's definitely what went wrong here.